And we are off to the races. Expectedly, those who we voted into power have decided that they will force ByteDance to divest from TikTok. In other words, they are going to force a sale to a US-based entity. The number of votes here in this screenshot are pretty evident that our politicians do not want us to have conversations. Collateral damages will now be, of course, the opportunity to express ourselves and have conversations with each other, regardless on which side of the aisle you actually fall. It will certainly negatively impact a number of US businesses, particularly small businesses, as we have evidenced on this very app that many small businesses have actually succeeded because of this app. This will, of course, now be negatively impacted. The question is, who is going to make an offer on ByteDance and buy TikTok from underneath their umbrella, and where it's going to end up. At the end of the day, this was a decision not in favor of the American people. This was a decision in favor of social media networks that are already in existence, such as Facebook and various others, who are, of course, wanting to preserve their interests, and they speak with dollar bills as far as lobbyists are concerned. Where is this going to go next? I'm sure the ByteDance attorneys, TikTok attorneys, are going to figure out what their strategies are. As far as the users are concerned, we have essentially 6 months to find a different place. There's one other consideration that doesn't get a lot of spotlight. It might actually be in TikTok's best interest to cease operations in the United States altogether, because in the event of a forced sale, it means that they hand over the company. With that, they hand over the code, they hand over the algorithm, they hand over everything that also works outside of the United States. And the United States, although 170 million users, is not the largest user base. Might be the largest user base by country, but TikTok has 1 billion plus users. Losing 170 million of those, of course, would be a significant cut. It would also be a significant cut in advertising revenue, because a lot of money is spent by US advertisers. However, rather than handing over the entire castle and the village and the source code and everything else, metaphorically speaking, it almost makes more sense for TikTok to say sayonara to the United States and leave us in a communications desert, because the alternatives are projects that already have sold our data, that already have collected everything they need to know about us, such as Meta, Google, and Snapchat, and everyone else who is, interestingly enough, not impacted by this bill. And considering that our politicians are targeting the US proper, completely forgetting that there's a world outside of the United States where our data is, by the very same networks that are inside the United States, being sold globally, we are making mistakes, and we are causing negative impacts that may very well cost us more than we were originally willing to bargain with. So where are we gonna go? Well, to begin with, most of your favorite creators already have different variations of outlets. For instance, you can find mine in the link in the bio, Instagram, YouTube, and of course, my recently created Substack. And for the rest of the 170 million Americans, I hope that we can find a method of communication that is akin to TikTok, but happens in the decentralized space, ideally, perhaps on a blockchain, or in a Napster-style peer-to-peer variation, with a free tier that is supported by advertisements and a paid tier that is free from advertisement. YouTube is showing the way. We do not need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to find our own lane on the highway. It is absolutely doable. The question is whether we are fired enough to actually get it done. That's where we are, because if I were TikTok at this point in time, I would pull out of the US market rather than surrendering everything that makes me TikTok. And I would let the US slowly but surely burn down to a smolder. It's self-inflicted, my friends. So let's hope we can get out of this. But now many of us are aware that the breaking news of today are that the House Resolution 7521 has passed overwhelmingly, forcing ByteDance to divest from TikTok in the US market space. Now, many of the politicians have voted in a manner in which we expected them to vote. But there was one politician in particular where I was very interested as to what he's going to do.
I don't think TikTok is going to be banned. There was a bill to ban TikTok last year, but it didn't pass. It didn't even get a vote. TikTok may be sold to another company, but it'll continue to operate. The bill that just passed the House was about telling TikTok they have to sell to another company.
I'm really curious, next time you turn on the camera to tell your 2+ million followers here on this app, many of whom had your back at any turn of the events, why you voted to subdue the First Amendment rights of Americans. What is your position? What is your explanation? I would really like to hear how you follow that one up. I think we've just entered the absolute twilight zone. Now I'm even agreeing with this guy.
Hey, everybody, it's Robert F. Kennedy Jr. here. I've been hearing a lot about the momentum in Congress to ban TikTok, and I want you to remember that every right that the government has ever taken away from citizens was removed under the pretense of national security. My father's favorite philosopher, Albert Camus, wrote that the welfare of the people is always the alibi of tyrants. And it provides further advantage of giving the servants of tyranny a clear conscience. Remember that when Congress gives Joe Biden the power to remove an app from your cell phone. People love TikTok. It's the digital public square. The First Amendment should not be disregarded for any reason. We should be encouraging more discourse in this country instead of less.
The science-denying presidential candidate who's still riding the coattails of his good family name is actually correct. TikTok is the digital town square. It allows us to have an expression, to share an opinion and views and evidence and perspectives. And if we are cocooned in our echo chamber who sees the world through the same lens, then we will find agreement and supportive commentary and videos will be shared. However, we also may reach across the aisle and find that people disagree. But all those are functions of communications, including the appalling but still relevant rage farming. All those are functions of us connecting. 170 million of us talking to one another or at each other or arguing with each other. That is the beauty of this app, which works at lightning speed, allowing us unprecedented access to one another. That includes critiquing or praising, depending, our government. By forcing ByteDance to divest from TikTok, handing it off to an entity that is unknown to us, our means of communications may be in danger. Besides the fact that TikTok may cease to operate in the United States altogether, considering we have, give or take, 170 million users here, and TikTok accounts for over 1 billion users, and the bill would essentially mean that they hand off their IP. That includes the source code, the algorithm, and everything else that pertains to it, meaning that the app in and of itself would surrender to the United States government set up to sell to a U.S. entity. Thereby, the U.S. entity would be in charge of the entire world as far as TikTok's application and usability is concerned. In the meantime, the impact on our First Amendment to connect with one another and to have conversations free from encumbrance of the government is being jeopardized. And therein lies my actual true problem. I don't care if it's TikTok. It could be bubblegum wrapper. Whatever the app is called, don't care. All this is a variable to me. What's at stake to me is that I cannot express myself in the manner in which I want to, feel like I need to, when I want, and particularly where I want. To tell me what I can and cannot do is completely unacceptable. And that is the privileged white guy talking here. To further suppress the voices of marginalized communities, to further suppress the voices of our BIPOC community, of our women, of our LGBTQIA+ community, of our disabled community, because they are all here. That is the true disservice that they're setting up to do. And they have done so with flying colors. Because whatever is around the corner, we don't know. And TikTok, with all of its faults and just reprehensible user management, at least we know what we're in for. And what I particularly dislike in regards of communicating is uncertainty. Of course, clearly they don't care, because otherwise they would have voted differently, or at least have taken up more time for consideration. But this was speed-tracked. something we certainly will not find about any other legislation that is, for instance, addressing homelessness or women's rights or the rights of the LGBTQIA plus community. So my concerns at the end of the day are simply that if our speech, which is our vehicle to connect, is negatively impacted, everything else that allows us to come together, to unionize, to form unity, to support, or to address grievances is being inhibited, negatively impacted, and potentially disabled. Because the power associated with that bill does not just stop with TikTok.